If you enjoy stepping into the past, remember to like and subscribe. Now, tell me who should travel next and in what year. The scent of dusty stone and crushed olives fills the air, sharp beneath the baking sun of Athens. The streets are a maze of ochre walls flecked with shadow, narrow lanes where the scent of sweat from market sellers and the faint smoke of evening fires weave into a harsh perfume. He blinks against a sky too blue to hold, a brightness unforgiving enough to stab through his lids. As he lies sprawled on rough cobblestones that have long since faded beneath the weight of countless sandals. He has no memory of how he got there, only the rush of cold, dry dust filling his mouth, his clothes ragged and foreign, yet strangely comfortable against the gritty skin of his forearms. The sun presses down, relentless and unrelenting, its heat building as he pushes himself upright, the rough stones cutting into his bare palms. His mind, wired for digital clarity and binary rhythm, jostles wildly with the sensory overload of the 5th century BCE. Around him, the city pulses with life, traders shouting their wares in fractured bursts of ancient Greek, the clatter of wooden carts over stones, the distant cacophony of debate from the agora, tangled with the cries of children chasing chickens through the dust. His shoes are gone, replaced by the calloused soles of someone adapting quickly. The faint scratch of leather straps on a tunic he doesn't recognize grates against his skin, but it's tolerable and unexpected comfort. Across the street, a squad of Athenian hoplites marches by, their bronze greaves catching midday glints. The city is restless, bracing itself. Word travels of growing tensions with Sparta, the threat of war pressing on the horizon as the city-state's proud democracy grapples with ideas of justice and power. He masks the vertigo of time shifting and senselessness, focusing on the patterns that glimmer beneath this ancient chaos. Cause and effect, input and output. His mind still dreams in algorithms, code lines flowing in sequences he cannot speak aloud, but can trace in the rhythm of everyday life here. The blacksmith's methodical strike of hammer on anvil resonates with logic. Each stroke builds a structure, measurable and replicable. He knows he must build trust if he is to survive. Trust that his strange skills, alien concepts he barely understands himself, might matter to the thinkers around him. The agora becomes his laboratory. Philosophers gather, voices weaving questions about truth and reason, existence and the soul. Using simple gestures, he sketches grids and sequences in soft clay early binary, not unlike his code, but primitive, palpable. Their eyes widen with curiosity. Something sparks in the air, an unfamiliar but welcoming shift. He senses respect rising through shared understanding, bridging centuries with pure logic. His modern frameworks, when carefully unfolded, start to shape ancient debates about knowledge, as if they were new tools forged for this epoch. By night, the city cools into shadows, and he lies beneath stars unpolluted by city smog. The scent of jasmine drifting faintly amid the rhythmic chorus of night insects and distant voices. Fatigue seeps through muscle and mind alike. Strange and unyielding, this life scratches and reshapes him. He wonders if, in this timeless place where ideas were born, his presence might ripple into unseen futures, as subtle and persistent as the dust settling slowly over stone. The around, the agora throbs, a chaotic symphony of voices shouting and bargaining. Horses' hooves striking uneven stones, and the relentless buzz of a city that never truly rests. He steps carefully, still new to this pace, feeling the rough, worn edges of marble beneath his sandals. As the crowd surges around him like a tide, he can neither predict nor control. His mind, wired for circuits and precision, reels at the chaotic cacophony. The clamor jars against his modern sense of order, the overlapping markets of fishmongers, potters, olive oil sellers, and philosophers make a dissonant soundtrack of survival and dispute. Yet beneath the noise, he picks out patterns, rhythms in the barter, flow in the crowds, sequences in the steps of the young slaves carrying worn amphorae to eager buyers. Its disorder sewn with invisible threads of logic, a live, breathing web of interaction. He navigates these twisting lanes, senses sharpened by necessity, the rough bark of olive branches bundled for sale, the bitter zing of lamp oil burning low in clay lamps, the scrape of loose gravel beneath his feet. Stalls sprawl chaotically, piles of figs turning sticky under the sun, jars of pungent fish sauce tighter with age. To survive here, he learns to read the signs carved in faces and gestures, much like debugging a stubborn line of code, each movement a signal in a vast, composite system. The philosophers he's been gravitating toward crowd near the temple of Hephaestus, voices raised over wine-scented air, gestures fracturing the space between reason and rhetoric. He sketches simpler codes in the dirt beneath their feet, sequences they seem to watch, puzzled but intrigued. Slowly, their questions shift, mirroring his logic as he explains how repeated commands build complex functions, just as their logos build arguments. The connection, though tenuous, kindles something new here in the crossroads of old thought and new method. More than once, his modern assumptions strain against this world. The lack of written symbols for abstract code, the absence of metal tablets and screens, it forces him to reinvent, to simplify, to find new mediums for complexity. Yet these constraints open unexpected avenues, tactile, oral, visual. Each day, he crafts logic into stories, palettes of shapes and sounds, unfolding his digital maps onto sun-baked stones instead of glowing screens. Around him, the city braces itself. News trickles in of Persian threats mounting in the east, Athens armored not just with hoplites and triremes, but with ideas, civic debates, and fragile alliances. The rhythm of conflict seeps into every conversation, sharpening edges and testing loyalties. By the seventh day, exhaustion pools beneath his skin, damp and heavy. The constant noise wears at his nerves, but beneath that weariness lingers a stubborn thread of curiosity and resolve. The task of translating code into clay, chaos into comprehension, is slow and maddening and fundamentally human. He realizes then that every line he draws, every argument he helps shape, quietly defies the relentless entropy of time, binding a future barely imagined in the dust-streaked sun, that feels strange and foreign. The rough linen itches where it rubs against his neck, and every breath he takes carries the heavy aroma of the marketplace, sun-warmed pottery, crushed figs fermenting in baskets, and the faint metallic tang of olives pressed too early. He fidgets, tugging at the folds uncertainly, feeling the weight not just of the garment, but of curious gazes that flicker like shadows from the surrounding crowd. It is his third week now, and the initial shock has blurred into a slower kind of bewilderment. Each morning begins with sweat already beading on his forehead, soaking the rough cloth that clings stubbornly to his chest and back. The sun beats down, relentless and indifferent, as he traverses the city's stone streets, the dust beneath his feet rising in small clouds. The cloak of his modern identity feels peeled away by heat and rough textures, replaced by something raw and exposed. He catches glimpses of himself in polished bronze mirrors, the lines around his eyes drawn tighter, hair tousled in a way he never thought possible without a modern comb. The others wear their tunics as second skins, layered, draped with practiced ease. But for him, every movement is a reminder of his outsider status. Long stares flicker from market women, young boys, and the philosophers clustered in the shade of marble porticos, their robes falling like soft waves around them. Effortless and familiar, his modern mindset is restless against these constraints. He misses the comfort of the smooth touch screen, the fast pulse of code streaming through his fingers, the logic compiled instantly rather than painstakingly traced with charcoal on stone. Yet there is a strange poetry to this archaic era, the accepted slow rhythm of manual labor, sweat mixing with dust, the physical trade of ideas and goods. Today, he carries an idea sparked by his coding background, an attempt to explain algorithms through stories, a tapestry of cause and effect. He sketches a diagram in ash on a stepping stone near the temple of Athena, his fingers tracing circles and lines. gestures folding complexity into simple shapes. The philosophers watch, leaning in, intrigued by this foreign approach to reason, his modern logic threading new patterns through their ancient debates on truth and knowledge. The city wears a restless tension, whispered in rumor and seen in quickened glances. The shadow of the Persian threat looms larger now, and even the marketplace seems uncertain, a breath held between festivals and wars. He notices how this constant pressure sharpens minds and tempers bodies, how it weaves into conversations and colors the fabric of daily life. By nightfall, the sun's scars replaced by cool shadows, he sinks tired and aching onto a slab worn smooth by centuries. The rough tunic clings to sweat and dust, reminding him how far he is from anything familiar. Yet, beneath the fatigue, a small seed of acceptance takes root. This awkward garment, these heavy steps, are the first layers of his new skin in a world where survival will come not from speed or ease, but from seeing patterns others miss and learning to listen beneath the clamor. Steps onto the uneven path, each footfall a lesson in discomfort. Dust rises in thin clouds, swirling with the faint, acrid smoke wafting from distant hearth fires. The sun pours down mercilessly on Athens streets, heating the stones until they sting underfoot. His sandals, hastily wrapped and rough against his skin, offer scant protection, and his bare arches feel every pebble's jagged edge, as if the city itself were testing the resilience of this stranger amidst its pulse. This week, the biting sensation in his feet commands his attention more than the roar of the agora or the scent of crushed olives from the market. Learning to walk here is a slow reckoning, the delicate balance between protection and agility, between endurance and pain. His modern mind, used to engineered comfort and soft soles, wrestles with the sheer physicality of bare feet against ancient stone streets, where dust, sweat, and heat weave an unyielding barrier between body and earth. Each step forces him into a new awareness of his surroundings. The uneven cobbles laid in haphazard patterns, the grit hidden in cracks, the stray shards of pottery lost beneath the daily bustle. The cool shadow beneath an olive tree offers brief relief, the bark rough beneath his fingers as he leans in to cool down. His tunic clings damply to his back, a reminder of the unrelenting heat that requires more than logic to endure. It demands adaptation through senses sharpened and patience learned by pain. In the agora, the atmosphere hums with a mix of commerce and philosophical questioning. His attempts to bridge centuries feel as precarious as his footing. The abstract concepts of coding he offers must translate without tools, without the glowing interface of a screen. Instead, he relies on charcoal and stone, tracing sequences and loops on fragments of broken pottery. The philosopher's eyes narrow thoughtfully, the flicker of understanding a small, precious reward amid confusion. The ancient city's rhythm shifts subtly this week. Soldiers march to the rhythmic beat of sandals on stone, their bronze armor gleaming harshly in the sun. Rumors of the ongoing conflict with Persia ripple through conversations, a constant undercurrent carrying both fear and resolve. He senses the city's fragile balance, the way hardship weaves through daily life, grounding lofty thoughts in the reality of scars and sacrifice. His mind oscillates between frustration and fascination. The pain in his feet mirrors the frustration of lost digital comforts and communication delays. But it also opens a door to empathy with the people who tread this same ground day after day. Each sore step builds resilience. Each gritty pebble hardens not just his soul, but his resolve. As dusk descends, the city cools and the dust settles softly on worn sandals and bare skin alike. He pauses at the edge of a well, watching ripples in water caught in flickering torchlight. The ache in his feet is a quiet reminder that adaptation is never just mental. It's a full-body negotiation with time and place. Here, survival bends not only on swift thought, but on the slow endurance of skin against stone, the willingness to carry the sting forward into the uncertain path ahead. The dry air sharp in his nostrils, and feels it, the fragile pulse of a city balanced precariously between plenty and want. The scent of warm crust and smoldering embers anchors him amid the unfamiliar, a reminder that survival here lives in the breath between each inhalation and the hunger felt beneath a grumbling stomach. This week, sweat coats his skin more heavily, mixed with miles walked unevenly. His hands bear the grit of wind-blown stone and cracked clay. The days begin early with the steady rhythm of bakers loading flat loaves into communal ovens, their faces streaked with soot and concentration. He watches patiently, fingertips tracing patterns in the dust as he attempts to map these processes with a developer's precision. Small inputs, precise timing, yielding nourishing results. It's a code writ in flour and fire, painstaking but vital. A lesson blurred by smoke, yet clear as the taste of warm bread filling his senses. Around him, the agora swells with scent and sound, a tumult where metal and leather barter with words as sharp as daggers. The philosophers he's forged tentative connections with gather under the shade of olive branches. Wrestling with concepts, he tries to translate into logical sequences his own code, normally abstract and digital, now takes physical form in charcoal sketches on slabs of stone. Explaining loops through cycles of harvest and hunger, he finds the ancient minds receptive to frameworks linking cause and effect with the rhythms of daily life. Yet the fragility of this world wells close beneath those explanations. He sees the furtive glances towards stores of grain, the careful rationing of water in cups rough with use. The recent plague that swept parts of Athens casts long shadows, silent reminders in hushed fears and quickened steps. Each loaf baked, each ration weighed, breathes survival into a populace poised on the edge of lean times and sustained hope. His modern assumptions stumble here. The instant feedback of code is replaced by waiting and watching, trial and error stretched across days. But the slow unfolding reveals new insights, how constraints breed creativity, how scarcity sharpens decisions beyond binary logic. His presence, strange as it is, becomes a tool to weave old knowledge and new reason, to navigate and perhaps ease the unyielding demands of hunger and health. At night, as the city cools and smoke fades to embers, he lies beneath starlight, the faint taste of bread lingering on his tongue. His body aches, but his mind roils with reflection. This place hums with fragile breath, fragile hopes knotted in time. Each inhale and every withheld bite stitches a delicate fabric of endurance, a quiet testament that even in ancient Athens, survival is a coded pattern written as much in human spirit as in bread and smoke. Beneath his feet, and his hands are sticky with wet slip as he reaches toward the wheel. The cool, spinning surface, an unfamiliar and demanding partner. Around him, the rhythmic slap of hands shaping pots, rounded bellies, flared rims, narrow necks, pulses like a heartbeat through the cramped space. He feels the gritty resistance of the clay yielding and pushing back, a raw lesson in patience and control that no line of code ever conveyed. This week, his routine is shaped by the slow, tactile demands of the pottery shop, hours spent kneading, shaping, and smoothing vessels destined for kitchens, baths, or the altars of Athens. Each pot is a functional algorithm, crafted by hand with trial and error rather than debugging tools. His modern mind, wired for precise commands and instant outputs, wrestles to translate digital efficiency into manual repetition. The wheel does not forgive mistimed pressure or hasty movement. It spins on with quiet indifference, carving the shape he both resists and learns to guide. The clay's cool, moist surface imprints itself onto his palms, a constant tactile reminder of this world's tangible realities. He grows more aware of the textures, the grainy powder of dried clay dust resting on his arms, the faint tackiness on his fingertips, the sharp edges of broken shards carefully gathered to avoid injury. His sandals scuff the dirt floor as he moves deliberately between kilns and shelves, the smell of smoke and sun-baked earth winding through open windows. Outside the workshop, Athens hums with life, the distant murmur of the assembly, the clang of bronze in the armorer's yards, and the laughter of children chasing stray goats seep through the walls. The city breathes history and uncertainty. The specter of Persian conflict hung invisible in conversations and cautious eyes. His mind, ever analytical, notices how this tension sharpens behavior, like the heat of the kiln shapes clay, transforming raw potential into hardened reality. He shares moments with local potters, their weathered faces curious but wary. His attempts to explain the logic behind coding stumble through language barriers. But he finds bridges in patterns and sequences. The looping nature of a potter's wheel, meeting the cycle of repetition in software. Philosophers linger nearby, drawn to this new method of thinking, as he sketches flowcharts in charcoal on shards, linking cause and effect with physical form. By the week's end, fatigue boils beneath his skin, a deep ache born from muscles unfamiliar with this kind of labor, from mental exertion tangled with physical effort. Yet beneath that exhaustion, a quiet respect grows. Work here is not abstract, but elemental, forged by fire and human touch. The slow crafting of clay pots is a reminder that progress is often molded by persistence and acceptance, shaped as much by the weight of the material as by the weight of time itself. He clings to his fingers as he dips a crude piece of barley bread into the viscous green-gold liquid. The taste strikingly unfamiliar, harsh at first, but strangely grounding. The sharpness is tempered by a tumble of coarse salt, grains that crunch stubbornly between his teeth, marking the bare simplicity of nourishment in this city poised between plenty and want. The air hums faintly with distant chatter from the marketplace, mingled with the soft scrape of pottery and the low murmur of everyday survival. This week, his senses map the unfamiliar terrain of sustenance. With every bite swallowed, the dryness of rustic bread baked over wood fires, the smoky tang of grilled fish fresh from the Aegean, the sour sharpness of goat's cheese resting gently on his tongue. His modern palate, trained for endless choices and refined flavors, now confronts the elemental reality of food as survival, fuel measured not just in calories, but in the endurance it grants. Each meal here feels like a lesson coded in simplicity, a pattern of basic needs sequenced against the harsh demands of this ancient world. He observes how these crude tastes encode a fragile economy, the olive groves tended with care, the salt harvested painstakingly from coastal pans. Waste must be minimal, every drop saved or shared, measured and counted in a way his modern assumptions had often ignored. The knowledge hidden in these practices engages him. It mirrors, in its own way, the efficiencies behind coding, clean, purposeful, effective. Each resource is a variable in a system of survival. Each ration a calculated function, balancing immediate need against future cost. At the edge of the agora, the philosophers, still drawn to him, lean closer to his stray chalk diagrams, now etched in the dirt to map sequences of preservation. Cycles of planting, harvesting, salt curring, storage. His explanations attempt to bind the abstract concept of loops and conditionals to these daily rituals, spinning logic into tangible form. Slowly, recognition dawns in their faces, a bridge crossing centuries through reason and necessity. Outside the discussions lies a city breathing in sharp rhythms, spices traded from distant lands, the clatter of carts loaded with grain, the murmur of prayers seeking favor for bounteous harvests amid uncertain times. The looming threat of the Persian conflict adds weight beneath these exchanges, a silent but constant reminder that survival here is precarious, balanced like salt on the edge of a knife. By week's end, fatigue settles deep within him, a slow exhaustion wrapped in longing for modern comforts, but tempered by growing respect for this world's raw, unsparing flow. The bitter olive oil, grainy salt, and dusty bread are no longer just tastes, but markers, small truths embedded in the weight of living where every kernel matters. He feels, quietly, that survival is less about abundance than about learning the code beneath scarcity. The simple logic written plainly in bread and salt, the faint voices calling out from shaded stalls, and the tang of crushed herbs carried on a warm Athenian breeze. He watches the small gesture, the cautious pencil-thin stroke on rough parchment, as if it were a code unfolding before his eyes, each line a link in a fragile chain of communication. Around him, the agora pulses with life, potters stacking their wares, fishmongers cleaning catches still fresh from the sea, and elderly men whispering names and histories like sacred passwords, their words slipping through the heat-thick air. This week, the challenge is more than just surviving the city's chaos. It's stepping into the delicate web of human exchange. His modern mind, used to rapid taps on glass screens and instant messages, grapples with the slow, deliberate economy of ancient speech and writing, where every syllable, every gesture carries weight. He scratches the edge of a broken pot with a chipped flint, trying to mimic the swift lines he has seen scribbled by merchants on their account tablets. It's awkward, clumsy even, but necessary. Every mark becomes an experiment, a first attempt at the code of conversation here, where trust is built brick by brick and word by word. The market folk regard him with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. Lips purse and eyes narrow when they catch his stilted phrases or gestures, but some lean closer, offering halting smiles and nods. He notices how often names, whispered, repeated, and softly echoed, open doors. These are not just titles, but keys to identity, status, and connection. With each passing day, he learns to listen for these whispered names, weaving them into hesitant exchanges as though building a rudimentary network. His attempts to explain coding logic to the philosophers who linger nearby complicate matters. Without the glowing ease of a modern screen, he resorts to simple diagrams drawn in dust and charcoal cause and effect translated into intersecting lines and shapes. The philosopher's eyes flicker with intrigue, some puzzled, others open to this new language, bridging their pursuit of truth to his digital reasoning. Outside the conversations, the city breathes tension, voices edged with stories of conflicts across the Aegean, whispers of alliances shifting like sands underfoot. The sudden war with Persia looms in the background, a shadow in the marketplace that shapes words and deeds with quiet urgency. By the end of the week, the scrape of quills and the soft sound of names become less foreign, more a part of the city's pulse beneath his skin. Communication is a delicate algorithm, not merely code or words, but a living structure built from patience, understanding, and the willingness to be vulnerable. He feels the fatigue, not just of language barriers, but of building bridges where none existed, a subtle reminder that connection, like software, must be debugged slowly, line by line, in the crowded, dusty weave of human presence. A shock of cold water rushing over cracked skin wakes him before the sun climbs fully above the Athenian rooftops. Fingers stiff and raw from hours of toil the day before, he rubs at his hands against the coarse fabric of a woolen cloth, the roughness scraping stubborn flakes of dry skin. The air carries the briny scent of the nearby sea, mingled with the faint smoke of olive wood fires burning low. Around him, Athens stirs, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the rhythmic slap of sandaled feet on stone, the layered murmur of vendors unpacking wares. This week carries the relentless weight of daily labor etched deep into muscle and mind. His hands bear the physical record of his transformation. From tapping glass screens and typing swiftly on keyboards, he now wrestles with gritty tasks that demand endurance, hauling water from wells, tending to the slow, smoky fires of communal ovens, gathering scattered grains without spilling a precious kernel. The modern ease of instant feedback is replaced by hours spent in repetition, in trial and error under a sun that demands strength and patience. His skin cracks and stiffens not just from the harsh elements, but from the unfamiliar demands of this ancient world's survival code. At the pottery workshop, he measures time and movement carefully, applying the logic of sequencing he knows from coding. Every step in forming a vessel, every adjustment on the wheel, becomes a series of deliberate inputs, shaping outputs tangible and fragile. His mind runs through loops and conditionals as he works alongside weathered potters whose hands move with practiced certainty. They watch him, an outsider whose attempts at explanation blur ancient conceptions with unfamiliar logic. Yet some nod, curious, recognizing in his method a new way to approach old crafts. The city hums with tensions felt beneath daily rhythms. Rumors swirl of battles yet to come, the distant shadow of conflict with Persian forces pressing on the polis. Conversations twist between hope and worry, the uncertainty threading through marketplaces and homes like a silent current, even as he scrapes clay or fetches water. The wider world presses in a reminder that survival here is as much about navigating human fears as mastering physical labor. By evening, his body aches, a deep, steady fatigue born of hands roughened and lungs filled with dust and smoke. Yet within this ache is a strange clarity. The fragility woven into daily tasks reveals a broader truth. Adaptation here is not simply about intellect or skill, but about surrendering to the slow grind of experience. His modern assumptions falter, replaced by a sense that progress is measured in persistence, in the willingness to embrace the sting of cold water and the weight of cracked hands. Day after demanding day, the memories like captured fireflies into the thick, smoke-laden air. The scent of burning charcoal and hot iron clings to his clothes and hair as he steps closer to the blacksmith's forge, warmth radiating in waves from the glowing coals. His hands still bear the faint grit of stone and dust. But here, near the forge's heat and the rhythm of steady labor, a new kind of companionship begins to take shape, quiet, unspoken, forged like the metals shaped under the smith's hammer. This week, survival means more than mastering tasks. It means building trust with people who measure character in sweat and steadiness rather than words. The blacksmith's family moves with practiced ease through the smoke and clutter, a wife carefully tending woven baskets of tools, children threading between legs and coals, their faces drawn with both curiosity and caution. His presence, awkward and foreign, makes their world more complex. And yet the slow exchange of work, handing tools, steadying shaped metal, fetching water, begins to bridge the distance. His modern mind, used to digital logic and clear structures, now tests itself in this realm of nuance and measure. Amidst the soot and heat, his understanding of systems bends to fit the rhythm of manual craftsmanship. He finds himself tracing patterns in the strikes, the folding and hammering, a kind of algorithm nuanced by human touch. Carefully, he sketches simple parallels between his coding skills and the iterative nature of metalwork. Each cycle of heating and shaping a loop aimed at perfecting form and strength. When the philosophers wander nearby, interested as ever, he uses charcoal and scraps of broken pottery to draw his ideas, blending his explanations of logic gates with the tangible experience of the forge's heat and force. Outside the forge, the city moves with attention sharpened by distant war drums and wary eyes. Rumors of Persian movements ripple through Athens, threading unease into daily life, even as the blacksmith's children laugh briefly over rough-hewn wooden toys. The larger world presses in quietly, a shadow behind the flickering glow of fires and oil lamps. By the end of the week, his muscles ache with honest fatigue, forged anew beneath hardness and heat. But beyond the exhaustion, a deeper awareness settles, a realization that trust, like iron, takes time to shape and temper. It is slow work, built in moments folded between hammer blows and quiet glances. Here, amidst the flickering shadows and warm fires, he senses the fragile beginnings of belonging, a code far older and more complex than any he's known, written in sparks and silence, a scattered shade of gnarled trunks. The chatter of distant market calls fades into a quiet hum, replaced by bursts of laughter, light, unexpected, and rich. He settles onto the cracked stone beside a cluster of locals, their faces bright with easy smiles and the unspoken ease of shared moments. The cool dapple of shadow on his skin contrasts with the day's heat, a small reprieve and a welcome invitation into a space where work and survival momentarily loosen their grip. This week brings a shift from solitude and struggle to the fragile weave of friendship. His hands, still rough from labor and exposure, relax slightly as he joins in the simple joy of a shared meal. Coarse bread dipped in sharp olive oil, figs sticky with sweetness, and roasted chickpeas that crackle faintly between teeth. His modern mind seeks patterns not just in code, but in interaction, watching how laughter shapes connections and how hospitality becomes a living algorithm of trust and belonging. Among these olive trees, the silent witnesses to countless histories, he finds moments to translate his world into theirs. With a stick, he sketches diagrams on dust-laden stone, outlining the loops and conditions of logic that underpin software, rendering abstract concepts accessible with patient gestures. The philosophers who linger nearby lean closer, their skepticism softening into curiosity, bridging gaps in language and time through shared reason. Outside this grove, Athens stirs with the mounting anxiety of looming conflicts. The distant walls murmur of Persian threats and uneasy alliances. Yet here, beneath the olive canopy, there is a fragile tranquility, a reminder that even in the shadow of war, human connection endures. The children's laughter rings clear, unburdened by fears that cloud the streets beyond. By week's end, fatigue lingers in his bones, a quiet ache shaped as much by longing as by labor, yet alongside it grows a steady pulse of belonging, woven from simple threads of shared food, exchanged stories, and the gentle sway of olive branches. He realizes that in this ancient world, survival is coded not only in logic or skill, but in the sacred, unpredictable algorithm of friendship, a pattern as vital and enduring as the trees themselves. And in the folds of his tunic, he runs his fingers over the rough surface of a half-carved column, cool and grainy beneath his palms, then traces the smooth curve of a freshly shaped clay vessel resting nearby. The air buzzes faintly with the scrap of chisels on stone and the soft, rhythmic slap of potter's hands against spinning wheels. Around him, the workshop hums with industry, a dance between raw material and patient hands, shaped by skill and steeped in silent hierarchies. This week plunges him deeper into the layered world of craft and class, where touch is a language and labor a constant measure of worth. He senses the sharp divide in textures, the cold, unyielding marble reserved for prestige and public monuments, and the warm, malleable clay that fills daily life and humble kitchens. His modern logic, used to binary and code, adapts to the subtle gradations of this ancient workmanship, recognizing patterns in repetition and refinement, but challenged by the social codes woven between artisan and master. In steady strokes, he shapes clay under the watchful eyes of seasoned potters, learning the language of patience and precision. The rhythmic pressure of wet hands on spinning wheels mirrors the sequencing of code loops, but here feedback is tactile and immediate. Too much pressure cracks the vessel, too little leaves it weak and fragile. His modern assumptions clash with these physical demands. There is no undo button, no easy reset. Every mistake scars the clay or stone, echoing in the quiet judgment of workshop elders. Nearby, sculptors chip away at marble blocks, their tasks heavy with social symbolism. He notes the careful distinctions in who touches what, and how reputation and birth whisper beneath the dirt and pigment. These artisans are not merely workers, but custodians of legacy, their efforts etched into the city's public face, carved for gods and men alike. Amid the dust and tools, he continues his efforts to bridge worlds, sketching flowcharts in charcoal against workshop walls, weaving his coding knowledge into diagrams that map cause and effect, iteration and conditionals. Philosophers visiting the workshops watch with growing interest, their faces alight with reflection as ancient thought grapples with a new logic born centuries ahead. By the week's close, fatigue settles deep in his bones, the physical weariness of hands worn raw and muscles stretched thin, the mental weight of navigating layered social codes as complex as any algorithm. Yet beneath that exhaustion, a quiet revelation stirs. Here, in the raw textures of marble and clay, survival unfolds not just in skill or knowledge, but in the patient adaptation to a world where meaning is carved slowly, hand by hand, touch by touch. The rough stone steps beneath his sandals hold the heat of midday sun, radiating slow waves into the soles of his feet. He pauses at a landing crowded with merchants and citizens, the air thick with mingled scents, fresh fish salted and piled high, crushed herbs tossed into steaming pots, and the sharp tang of leather from vendors' stalls. The buzz of voices rises like a living current, measured orders from the wealthier, eager bartering from the lower classes, all flowing through the city's heart with a rhythm he's only just beginning to grasp. Athens breathes here, a pulse encoded in layers of power, wealth, and place. This week draws him into the complex architecture of Athenian social order, felt in every gesture and glance as surely as the city's stone and dust. His eyes track the sharp lines of togas and tunics, the subtle exchanges that speak of privilege and rank, where a nod from a well-dressed elder parts the crowd, and a slave's hurried step avoids their gaze. The marketplace is a living algorithm of social status, its variables shifting with alliances, favors, and cautious distrust. His modern lens, built on logic and equality, strains at this codified hierarchy, but he senses the necessity, how the system holds fragile balance even as it constrains. He moves between stalls, tracing the coded exchanges of coin and commodity, the give and take that fuels daily survival. His own attempts at intervention, sketching out logical sequences with charcoal on stone spark wary glances. Philosophers near the agora observe the lessons he offers about cause and effect, the ways simple inputs generate complex outcomes. They consider his foreign logic as they debate truth and reason beneath columns carved in centuries past. Heat waves shimmer above stacked amphorae and woven baskets. Around him, the city thrums with the tension of recent battles and political maneuvering. The aftermath of the Persian invasions still echoing, a stark reminder that social systems exist amid the turbulence of war and uncertainty. He notes how these undercurrents shape not just politics, but every mundane transaction, every step on stone worn smooth by countless feet. By evening, exhaustion melds with awareness, the ache of shadowed muscles and crowded thoughts settling deep. He reflects on the intricate choreography of power and presence, how survival here depends not simply on skill or knowledge, but on reading and respecting the invisible codes written between stone steps and market calls. The heartbeat of Athens is both cruel and beautiful, an algorithm far older, and more enigmatic than any he has ever programmed, composed of human desires resting precariously on fragile order, worn marble columns where philosophers step lightly, their sandals stirring dust that glimmers faintly in the dappled sunlight. Their voices fold and rise, weaving questions about truth and reason into the thick Athenian air, punctuated by the soft scrape of sandaled feet on stone and the occasional rustle of a scroll unfurled. You find yourself drawn into this swirl, standing just beyond their circle, feeling both outsider and necessary, a bearer of strange logic shaped by a world centuries ahead. This week, the Agora becomes your laboratory, a place where ideas are as vital as olive oil or bread, and every whispered argument is a thread in a vast, timeless tapestry. Your mind, trained to map digital circuits and sequences, begins to translate the fluid debates into a new form of code, an analog logic sketched with charcoal on broken pottery, gestured with hands stained by ink and sweat. You watch the philosopher's eyes narrow, then widen as they trace your simple diagrams, loops representing cycles of thought, conditionals mirroring their ethical quandaries. They are hungry for clarity, and you offer pieces of a foreign puzzle, yet the gulf between worlds is palpable. Your assumptions about speed and certainty falter in the face of layered dialectics, endless questioning, and the oral tradition's meandering paths. The city hums beneath this intellectual fervor, merchants trading fish and cloth, children chasing, goats through dust-choked lanes. The distant clang of bronze armor from troop rehearsals, reminding you of the precarious balance between thought and conflict. The shadow of Persia's threat looms silently, coloring the urgency of political speech with an edge of fear. In moments of quiet, you sense the pulse beneath these debates, not just logic, but survival. Ideas are weapons and shields alike, wielded amid cultural rituals and civic duty. You adapt, shaping your explanations to fit their language of metaphor and myth, weaving cause and effect into stories that echo the tradition of Socratic questioning, but hint at the algorithms of your former life. By week's end, fatigue settles over you like the slow gathering of dusk, mental exhaustion mingled with the sun's heat and the dust that cakes your skin. Still, the flicker of understanding glows steady in the eyes around you, a fragile spark bridging centuries. You realize that here, beneath olive wood smoke and marble shadows, survival is not just physical endurance, but a breath held between ideas, the timeless dance of inquiry and doubt that defines what it means to be human. Of those gathered, unlikely friends bonded by shared toil and tempered by open stories. Here, beneath the flicker of oil lamps, the sharp edges of his displacement soften, replaced by an unspoken belonging that settles deep beneath his skin. The steady rhythm of breathing, the rustle of cloth, the gentle clink of simple pottery, all anchor him in this moment of fragile peace. This week marks a subtle turning point where survival stretches beyond the logic of code and algorithm into the territory of human connection. His modern skills remain tools, but they are no longer the sole currency. He listens as stories unfold in low, earnest tones, tales of lost kin, past festivals, and shadows cast by looming wars with Persia. The unfamiliar language wraps around him, but he catches meaning in pauses and gestures, weaving these threads into his growing understanding of this ancient world's heartbeat. Hands roughened by city labor and sun find his, a silent gesture shared among the quiet company. The philosophers linger nearby, their debates on truth and reason continuing as he gestures in kind, sketching logic patterns in the dust-laden floor. His explanations evolve, shaped by patience and the limitations of absence, not of screens or digital prompts, but of shared language and trust. In this weave between ancient thought and future knowledge, he senses a deeper rhythm, the pulse of ideas passed hand to hand, breath to breath. Beyond these walls, the city hums with tension and resilience. The threat of Persian forces whispers through marketplaces and court assemblies, a backdrop to daily negotiation and survival. Yet here, amid soft wool and steady hands, time seems to fold gently, offering respite from conflict and chaos. As night deepens, fatigue seeps into his bones, the weariness of limbs unaccustomed, the mental strain of adaptation, the quiet ache of longing. Yet it is tempered by the warmth around him. A small community built on shared laughter and stories. A reminder that home is less a place than a fragile, unfolding network of trust and presence. In this ancient world, he finds that survival is coded in more than algorithms. It lives in the steady pulse of friendship, the enduring beat beneath every whispered truth and shared smile. Forming a fragile map of logic in a world ruled more by spoken word than written code. Around him, the quiet murmur of the night swells with distant steps and the occasional scrape, moments when the weight of silence presses against his thoughts, tempting him with possibilities both dangerous and profound. This week, the allure of modern logic pulses stronger than ever. His mind races through sequences of power and control, not just over systems and machines, but over people and influence. He imagines the potential of his strange knowledge as a kind of weapon or shield amid Athens' intricate social and political games. The city teeters on the edge of war with Persia, and whispers speak of strategy and dominance. In these shadowed hours, he contemplates bending his coding insights to manipulate outcomes, to tip balances in favor of survival. or even advantage. Yet the world here resists such ease. The philosophers to whom he explains loops and conditionals look beyond utility to ethics, the very essence of truth and reason tangled with human flaws, and the messy unpredictability of desire and fear. He senses the tension, not just in ideas, but in the subtle glances exchanged when power is tested, in the unspoken rules governing who holds voice and who listens. Every advantage his knowledge offers comes tethered to risk, the temptation to crop and tailor his logic for gain gnaws against the caution bred by his growing respect for this ancient society's fragile equilibria. The city's pulse quickens, secret meetings held under oil lamplight, the rustle of scrolls outlining alliances and strategies, the whispered hopes and doubts of those caught between ambition and survival. He wrestles with the shadow of himself, the part eager to use logic as leverage, to rewrite rules for his own benefit, and the part grounded in a deeper understanding of human complexity. The flickering light illuminates not just his surroundings, but the fragile boundaries between wisdom and manipulation, between ethical reason and cold calculation. By the week's end, exhaustion tugs at his limbs and mind, but a quiet clarity remains. Power is never absolute, especially in a world woven of human frailty and chance. His modern logic is a tool, yes, but survival here depends on more than clever code. It rests on the delicate balance of trust, restraint, and the painful dance of doubt that shadows every choice. Its unfamiliar taste pulling him deeper into the nuances of this world, where nourishment and poison blur in the same jar. Around him, the low hum of conversations carries echoes of debate and doubt. Words wrapping around ethical questions as intricate as the twisting pathways of the olive groves surrounding Athens. This week, the weight of knowledge presses close, bitter and potent, revealing the cost hidden beneath the surface of every idea he shares. He moves between rough stone walls in the philosophers' gathering places, carrying his sketches and simplified codes etched in charcoal on pottery shards. His attempts to explain logic, loops, conditionals, algorithms probe deeper than technical curiosity. They stir unrest, a trembling awareness that knowledge is never neutral here. The ideals debated under sunlit colonnades insist on truth tempered by wisdom, and he wrestles with the shadow of consequences that ripple unseen. His modern assumptions falter as he watches the subtle shifting of faces, curiosity mixed with caution, hunger tempered by fear. This knowledge, his strange gifts from a future to past, could unravel lives or weave new patterns of survival. It is a power that demands restraint, and he feels the pull of temptation pulsing with every whispered question and lingering glance. The city hums with murmurs of war, alliances, and betrayals, each decision fraught with weight beyond simple logic. His hands tremble slightly as he maps more complex flows. How a single change in input can cascade into outcomes unforeseen and irreversible. The philosophers listen, their eyes reflecting not just wonder, but the burden of choice. Survival here depends on careful navigation, where ethics entwine tightly with strategy, where a single misstep can shatter fragile trust or ignite conflict. Outside, the scent of crushed herbs and sun-dried figs carries on warm breezes, grounding the fragile intellectual journeys in the earthy realities of daily life. The looming threat of Persia's armies reminds him that reason must coexist with courage, and that true strength often hides in silence and patience. By the week's end, exhaustion mingles with a deep, aching clarity. Knowledge is not merely power. It is responsibility etched in every breath and heartbeat. He understands now that survival in this world is less about technical mastery and more about the careful stewardship of truth, a bitter honey, sweet only when handled with care, to the warmth radiating from the midday sun. Around him, the agora hums with murmurs and movement, a steady pulse of lives woven together by shared rituals, arguments, and the grinding weight of decisions shaped across generations. The heaviness of silence settles in his chest, quiet but profound, a space where ancient wisdom and his fragmented future collide in restless tension. This week, the choice between worlds feels less abstract and more visceral. His modern mind, trained in the clarity of code and algorithm, strains to reconcile the layered, often messy truths born of oral tradition and philosophical debate. The philosophers gather nearby, their voices low but insistent, weaving threads of logic through narratives of ethics, justice, and the soul's immortality. You trace familiar patterns in their reasoning, yet the path diverges where certainty bends into doubt, and thought becomes as much about restraint as discovery. His skills, once a source of confidence, now pose questions as sharp as the stone beneath his fingers. Explaining concepts like loops or conditionals requires bridging language and time, transforming digital logic into stories drawn in dust or sketched on shards. Some minds open to this fusion, others recoil, wary of knowledge unbound from tradition. You sense the fragile balance they maintain between seeking truth and preserving order, and wonder where your own insight fits within this ancient framework. The city's tension is tangible. News of battles across the Aegean stirs unease, the shadow of Persian ambitions casting doubts over public assembly and private conversation alike. He watches how fear and hope dance in faces, the merchant calculating risks, the soldier steadying nerves, the philosopher weighing ideals against harsh realities. Survival here demands more than knowledge. It requires wisdom to choose when to speak and when to hold silence. As dusk gathers, fatigue settles deep. His body aches from days spent navigating stone steps and crowded debates. His mind wrestles with the weight of knowledge, both gained and withheld, in this liminal space between past and future. He understands that true power lies not in the certainty of answers, but in the delicate art of choice, the courage to honor ancient wisdom while nudging slowly toward insight, yet unwritten, in the narrow alleyway, mingling with whispers barely caught between the pressing shadows of stone walls. Flickering oil lamps sputter in the night, their soft glow casting long, wary glances from faces half hidden in folds of worn cloaks. You feel the weight of unspoken secrets pressing like the heat of a summer sun, the silent currents of power weaving tightly through these quiet exchanges. The city breathes tense and shallow, every breath measured, every word a careful decision. This week pulls you deeper into the murky dance of influence that thrums beneath Athens' public life. Your modern logic and coding frameworks pulse in your mind as tools both potent and dangerous, capable of shaping outcomes unseen but fragile, like the delicate balance of flickering flames around you. The philosophers who once welcomed your foreign reasoning now cast wary eyes that reflect the peril of knowledge untempered. Your insights into cause and effect, loops and conditions, begin to resonate beyond academic curiosity, hinting at potential leverage in a world where reputation and alliances are the true currency. Every whispered secret risks unraveling more than intended. You catch the quick shifts of gaze, the tightening of fingers around tokens and scrolls, symbols of favor and threat intertwined. His modern assumptions, so rooted in transparency and open systems, clash sharply with the coded silences and veiled references of this age. The city's fragile order trembles beneath the shadow of war with Persia, and survival demands not just understanding, but discretion, a learned caution that tempers even the most brilliant logic. Your hands sketch hurried diagrams in the dust, trying to map the unfolding patterns of influence, how a single decision cascades through social strata, how strategic silence can be as telling as the loudest speech. The philosophers study, some captivated, others uneasily silent, recognizing that the threads they pull may weave not only insight, but upheaval. Fatigue settles deep by week's end, as much a weariness of spirit as of body. The risk of altering fate, the temptation to wield knowledge as power, shadows every step. You realize survival here is not the mastery of information alone. It is the delicate balance of knowing when to act, when to hold back, and how to navigate the silent, electric tension that hums beneath every whispered glance in the city's restless heart. The crisp morning breeze carries the faint scent of sea salt and blooming thyme, brushing gently through the marble colonnades that rise solemnly against the pale dawn sky. The cool stone beneath his fingertips is smooth, worn by centuries of touch, yet heavy with silent history. Around him, the city awakens slowly, the distant clatter of carts over cobblestones, the muted steps of early risers weaving through shaded alleys, the soft murmur of voices gathering in quiet conversation. In this delicate light, he feels the weight of knowledge pressing quietly, but insistently, folded deep within the shadows carved by stone and time. This week unfolds in the stillness of early hours, where thought wrestles with burden and clarity dips into uncertainty. His mind, sharpened by years of coding logic and precise reasoning, now moves through an ancient world where information is not just power, but responsibility, one that must be wielded with care and reverence. The philosophers converge nearby, their discussions weaving between timeless questions of justice, truth, and the soul's fate. He offers sketches of logical sequences drawn on worn pottery, his digital concepts distilled into fragile symbols that bridge centuries and cultures. Yet his modern assumptions press uneasily against this world's rhythms. Here, knowledge is a delicate thread, vulnerable to unraveling when pulled too tight. His insights carry the potential to disrupt established orders or spark unintended consequences. And with each lesson shared, he senses the rising tide of expectation and fear. The shadows lengthen beneath the colonnades, mirroring the uncertainties gnawing at his resolve. Outside, whispers of the Persian threat linger, threading through the city's heartbeat, a reminder that survival blends the cerebral with the corporeal, where ideas mingle with swords and alliances. He watches as neighbors move with measured purpose, their faces etched by endurance and wary hope, embodying the paradox of a society steeped in wisdom, yet poised on the edge of conflict. By day's end, fatigue wraps around him like the heavy wool of his tunic, a mingling of physical weariness and mental weight. Still, beneath this exhaustion stirs a quiet acceptance, a recognition that carrying knowledge in such a world is less a gift than a solemn covenant. Here, beneath marble shadows and dawning light, survival demands more than strategy or skill. It requires patience, humility, and the steadfast courage to bear truths not lightly told, but deeply honored. The sun to the square's center. He feels the uneven stones beneath his feet, worn smooth by centuries, but sharp now, pressing up through his thin sandals as the city's pulse quickens suddenly, a ripple spreading outward with a force that surprises him. This week, the fragile consequences of decisions made days before begin unfolding in ways he hadn't anticipated. He watches the crowd coalesce, eyes flicking toward figures moving with purpose amid the swirl of traders and philosophers. The air hums with murmurs of altered plans, shifting alliances that reshape the city's delicate balance. His mind, wired to track outcomes and variables, notes the subtle changes, a slight hesitation here, a quickened step there that echo the loops and branches he knows from coding. Each small action cascades, a series of choices reverberating through lives and futures. In the midst of this, he reflects on how his interventions have seeded these ripples, the knowledge shared with curious minds, transforming into tangible change. Explaining coding logic to philosophers once seemed an abstract exercise, but now he sees the weight it carries. Frameworks that can build or unmake, offer clarity or breed confusion. His presence here is no accident. The future he seeks to preserve is already bending beneath the pressure of newfound insight. Yet, the modern assumptions that once felt like strengths now complicate his understanding. In Athens, decisions are not binary. They are knotted in ethics, politics, and human frailty. Each algorithm he tries to impose on society falters under the weight of emotion and tradition. The city's histories, battles lost and won, festivals celebrated, doctrines debated, resist neat order, insisting instead on iteration and debate, the messy growth of civic life. By evening, exhaustion pools beneath his skin, mixed with a strange exhilaration. Standing among the whispering shadows of olive trees and fading sunlight, he contemplates the unfolding web of cause and effect, how even the smallest choice sends echoes through time. Survival here is not the simple execution of logic, but the patient navigation of uncertainty, a continuous dance between intention and outcome in a world forever in flux. The holidays is bargaining in nearby markets. The sun presses down relentlessly, baking the stones to a dull heat, and sweat beads on his brow, stinging the edges of his eyes. The city feels alive, but unforgiving, each turn revealing both opportunity and consequence in equal measure. This week is marked by a growing tension in his steps, the weight of choices made, rippling outward in unexpected currents. His mind, accustomed to the clear logic of code and algorithms, now wrestles with the fuzzy edges of real-world cause and effect, where variables shift in ways no line of programming can predict. The philosophers congregate beneath olive trees, their debates swirling around truth and reason as always. But he senses a new urgency in their questions, a unease born from the changes that quietly unsettle the city. His attempts to share coding frameworks, loops, conditionals, branching processes, take on fresh dimensions here. The analog world resists, revealing gaps where social dynamics, fear, and ambition bend the neat simplicity of logic. As he sketches sequences in dust or charcoal, he watches expressions flicker, some faces bright with understanding, others clouded with suspicion or doubt. His knowledge offers tools, yes, but also a burden, exposing fault lines in alliances and testing fragile trust. Along the narrow streets, everyday life continues with fierce necessity. Merchants haul bales of linen. Women carry water jars balanced with practiced ease. Children race beneath sun-warmed stone arches. Yet beneath this bustle, the unrest simmers tensions from distant conflicts, with Persia echo quietly in market whispers and guarded glances. Decisions once theoretical are now lived realities, shaping the fabric of daily survival and communal fate. By day's end, exhaustion seeps into muscle and mind alike. His feet throb beneath the relentless sun, but it is the mental weariness, the weight of unintended consequences, that lingers longest. He understands now that survival is not just about mastering knowledge or technology, but about navigating the unpredictable pathways of human will and error. Each step forward is a negotiation with uncertainty, twisting and turning through a world where even the smallest choice can set far-reaching changes in motion. The rumble of raised voices cuts through the afternoon air, mingling with the earthy scent of crushed olive leaves and sun-baked stone. He feels it in the sudden jolt that travels through the crowded agora, words sharp and swift enough to carve divides where moments before there was quiet companionship. Nearby, a group of familiar faces he once called friends now circle each other warily, their glances heavy with suspicion and a quiet blame that tightens like a noose. The weight of growing influence presses down on him, a burden forged not only from his strange knowledge, but from the fractures it leaves in those around him. This week, guilt settles thickly, wrapping like a tangled thread around his days. His role as a bearer of foreign logic, a teacher of abstractions like loops and conditionals, has stirred more than curiosity. It has shaken foundations. Relationships he thought solid now strain under the weight of change, and the sharp voices are reminders that progress here is neither welcome nor neutral. His modern assumptions, once a source of confidence, clash painfully with ancient notions of loyalty and honor, where knowledge can be both gift and weapon, binding or breaking trust. He traces the contours of these fractures with careful steps, sensing how his presence has altered the rhythm of old friendships. The philosophers continue their debates, their faces etched with both wonder and wariness. He sketches diagrams in the dust, attempting to bridge understanding. But the silent distance he feels is a stark measure of how unfamiliar his truths remain. The city itself seems to hold its breath, caught between reverence for tradition and the jagged edges of new ideas pressing insistently against the old. Outside, the tension of war and political intrigue hangs like a low cloud, and he knows these personal fissures echo larger uncertainties. The evolving dance of alliances, distrust, and ambition is a complex algorithm of survival where every move recalibrates the balance. His mind loops endlessly through possible consequences, past and future intertwining in a dizzying web. As dusk falls and salt-tinged wind drifts through olive groves, exhaustion seeps deeply, settling as a quiet ache beneath his skin. Yet beneath the fatigue, a fragile awareness emerges. The impact of knowledge is never simple, never unburdened. It reshapes lives as necessary as the breath of the city itself, and as fraught as the silence that follows harsh words. The tang of crushed herbs carried on a cold breeze. Around him, movement slows under the sudden weight of weather and whispered expectation. The marketplace, once alive with barter and argument, now folds into quieter, more guarded exchanges. He feels the tension, a taut thread stretched thin between loyalty and burden, between knowledge held and the cost it demands. This week settles heavily on his shoulders, the gravity of responsibility pressing as palpably as the wet fabric against his skin. His modern skills, so precise and logical, are no longer enough alone. The fragile trust he's built, the delicate network of alliances and suspicions, fractures under strain. The philosophers continue their debates on truth and reason, but beneath their words lingers an unspoken anxiety about the changes his presence has stirred, the unsettling ripple of ideas that challenge not just intellect, but the very structure of the city's life. His attempts to model cause and effect, to explain algorithms and logic gates with charcoal on broken pottery, seem both vital and vulnerable. Each lesson draws fresh glances, some warm with understanding, others cool with doubt. The storm outside mirrors the unrest within. Alliances shift like shadows, and yesterday's certainty dissolves beneath the rain's steady rhythm. He notices how his assumptions falter, how modern notions of transparency clash with the opacity of ancient politics and customs. Here, survival demands more than innovation or knowledge. It demands discretion, empathy, and patience. The looming threat of conflict with Persia continues to cast a shadow over every decision, making each choice a thread pulled tight in a tangled web of fate. By nightfall, fatigue seeps deep, not just the ache of cold and damp, but the weariness born from carrying invisible weights. His body craves rest, but his mind turns over the complex calculus of trust and truth, power and consequence. He understands now that the burden of knowledge is never light. It rests in the spaces between words, in the silence after rain, and in the quiet resilience required to navigate a world where every step may shift the balance of lives and legacies. The sharp and worn stones of the Athenian courtyard, where shadows dance like restless spirits, flames crackle softly beneath rough clay pots, their warmth barely chasing the weight pressing on your chest. A heavy, quiet burden born from changes set in motion long before, yet seen only now in the uneasy glances and whispered rumors that stir among the city's corners. This week, the cost of unintended consequences settles deep within, a quiet echo beneath the flickering light. You trace the outlines of those consequences as they ripple through familiar circles, your carefully shared knowledge, those fragments of logic and digital reasoning you stripped down to charcoal sketches, has sparked something unforeseen. Friendships strain, alliances twist unexpectedly, and the old rhythms of daily life falter under new tensions. The philosophers you once engaged now tread carefully, measuring truths not only by reason, but by their fragile impact on society's delicate balance. Within the glow of firelight, you watch faces etched with worry and resolve, some hopeful for progress, others wary of upheaval. Your role as bearer of strange knowledge feels heavier than ever. Modern assumptions about clarity and control falter here, where human hearts and histories resist simple patterns. Decisions loop and branch unpredictably, weaving outcomes both bright and shadowed. Outside the household, the city hums with a restless unease. Recent skirmishes with Persian forces cast long shadows, and civic debates echo with fears of loss and survival. You sense how ideas, once sparks of hope, can ignite discord and reshape destinies beyond your control. As night deepens, fatigue flows through your limbs, a weariness not just of body, but of spirit. Yet within that heaviness grows a somber clarity. Every act of change carries a price, and survival demands the courage to bear both progress and its shadows. Beneath the flickering fires, you understand that knowledge is a double-edged gift, weaving through time with power and fragility entwined, forever reshaping the fragile fabric of human lives. The warmth of earth wraps the room in a gentle amber light, casting long shadows that flicker against rough-hewn walls, scented faintly with olive oil and smoldering herbs. The muted crackle of burning wood hushes the quiet murmurs shared between familiar faces, their glances soft, but laden with unspoken trust and growing closeness. You feel the comforting press of woolen cloaks drawn tighter against the night's cool air, the steady pulse of breathing mingling with the gentle rise and fall of whispered stories unfolding beneath the Athenian stars. This week unfolds in these tender hours, where survival moves beyond knowledge alone and steps deeply into the realm of connection. Your modern logic, once a sharp instrument of clarity, now bends gently around the warmth of human ties, growing stronger in shared vulnerability. Moments once marked by distance soften as hands brush lightly over earthenware cups. As laughter hesitates, then blooms, signals of friendship carved slowly. Patiently, in this ancient world's rhythm, the philosophers gather nearby, their debates on truth and reason weaving seamlessly with your silent sketches, simple codes etched in dust or on broken pottery, each mark a bridge between eras and ideas. Their eyes glimmer with newfound understanding. Yet these discussions now carry an edge thinner, more intimate, hinting at a fragile harmony between old wisdom and new insights. Here, amidst flickering shadows, you sense the paradox that knowledge ties not only to power, but to delicate webs of trust made resilient by time. Beyond these quiet walls, the city breathes with renewed energy. The tension of distant wars lingers, yet the streets echo too with the life of festivals near and markets bustling early. You notice how the pulse of community offers both shield and strength, a balance between caution and joy as Athens braces itself for uncertain days ahead. Exhaustion seeps into your body, the weariness of long days layered with the soft fatigue of tentative belonging. Yet, in this stillness, a profound truth emerges. Survival here is a dance of steady steps among flickering fires and quiet glances, where every bond forged gently knits you deeper into the city's enduring soul. Around you, the air pulses with sounds, the sharp chatter of vendors hawking figs and olives, the distant jangle of bronze coins exchanged, and the rhythmic slap of sandals against sun-baked stone. A gentle breeze carries the scent of crushed thyme and sun-warmed honey, intertwining with the faint sweetness of ripe pomegranates stacked high on wooden stalls. In the midst of this vibrant chaos, a tender touch brushes your arm, a moment fleeting yet charged, rippling through the otherwise relentless hum of daily life. This week unfolds like a delicate dance beneath the open sky, as new currents of emotion weave through the familiar routines. Love, unexpected and quietly insistent, blooms in the interstices of busy days and shared glances. Your modern logic, shaped by code and calculation, struggles to map this unpredictable landscape of feeling. So unlike the rigid sequences of your former world, yet even here, amidst the vibrant pulse of the agora, you find patterns. The subtle timing of smiles exchanged, the cadence of gestures, the gentle architecture of connection, crafting itself slowly between two uncertain souls. Your work, teaching philosophers the foundations of logic carved out of code, continues to draw curious and sometimes skeptical crowds. You sketch loops and conditionals on ceramic fragments, tracing the flow of cause and effect in forms your companions can touch and see. In these moments, insight sparks, a bridge between your digital mind and their world of dialectics and reason. But beyond the lessons, something more intimate grows, softer than the sharp edges of abstract thought, the cautious nurturing of trust, the warmth of presence amid marble and dust. The city around you sings with life, children weaving between stall tables, the crackle of firelight from evening hearths, the faint murmur of prayers offered to gods both distant and near. Yet beneath this vitality lies a quiet urgency. The threat of Persian forces still lingers at the city's edges, a shadow pressing on every gathering, every step. In this charged atmosphere, the fragile bloom of love offers an unexpected refuge, a reprieve carved out of the relentless march of history. By night's end, your body aches with fatigue, and your heart stirs with a newfound hope. The ancient stones beneath your feet carry stories of countless lives, and now, intertwined with theirs, is your own. You realize survival here is not only measured in knowledge or strength, but in the tender, unpredictable weaving of human connection, love kindling quietly amid the noise and dust of an ancient city, and slightly rough beneath your fingertips as you break off a piece, the crumbs settling onto worn stone. Around you, the murmurs of nearby voices weave a tapestry of old worlds and new philosophers debating abstract principles, merchants negotiating over grain, and your own thoughts tangled between times. This week, the boundaries between past and future feel as fragile and complex as the bread shared between strangers. You sit among a small gathering, the bread passed quietly from hand to hand, each piece a gesture of trust amid unfamiliar faces. Your mind races to hold together the disparate threads, modern logic and ancient customs, digital clarity and oral tradition, each demanding its own cadence and respect. Explaining the systematic beauty of code to philosophers used to dialectic unfolds slowly. Each loop and conditional described in gestures drawn in dust, charcoal, and fleeting speech. They listen, sometimes with awe, sometimes with caution, their eyes reflecting the challenge of adapting to a new form of reasoning. Yet, alongside this exchange grows an internal conflict. The world you fled and the one you inhabit pull against each other, different rhythms and rules entangling your sense of self. The structured logic that once provided certainty now collides with the unpredictability of human relations, where honor, fear, and loyalty ripple just beneath every calculated choice. Outside, distant drums echo the tension of looming conflicts, stirring unease even in these peaceful moments. The city's pulse, ancient and alive, threads through every conversation and gesture. You observe how adaptation is less about imposing new order and more about learning to navigate existing flows, where knowledge is woven into the fabric of community rather than mapped as isolated commands. Each shared meal, each hesitant smile becomes a vector of belonging, a step toward uniting fractured times within a single breath. As evening falls and the courtyard shadows lengthen, fatigue settles into your limbs, mingling with the bittersweet weight of belonging and loss. You realize surviving here demands embracing uncertainty, not just in the world, but within yourself. A continuous negotiation between tangled thoughts and shared bread, between the longing for home and the fragile beauty of this ancient living now. Dappled light filtering softly among ancient branches. Shadows stretch lazily over the sun-baked earth, offering fleeting coolness to a city that pulses just beyond the grove's edge. You run a hand along rough bark, the texture grounding against skin still unfamiliar with the weight of this time and place. Around you, the quiet rustle of leaves and distant murmurs of the marketplace blend with a newfound stillness. The silent promises seated here beneath these gnarled trees, roots intertwined, unseen, yet deeply felt. This week unfolds amid these ancestral shadows, where commitment takes root behind cautious eyes and measured words. Your presence here, a harbinger of strange knowledge and foreign thought, has drawn not only curiosity, but the delicate bonds of trust and responsibility. Each day brings new layers to relationships once tentative, now growing with careful tending. You teach the philosophers about coding sequences and logic gates, distilling your modern craft into analog symbols traced in dust and clay, shaping understanding that bridges centuries. Yet alongside these lessons, you perceive the unspoken, a solemn refrain beneath every exchanged glance and shared meal. The acceptance of your knowledge carries weight beyond intellectual grasp. It is a promise to wield insight not merely as power, but with respect for the fragile social soils that sustain this city. You feel how tightly these commitments bind you, like tendrils wound deep beneath the olive canopy. Unseen, yet unyielding, the city breathes around this place, a mosaic of festival songs, salt-tinged winds, and the distant clang of bronze armor preparing for unseen threats. Each sound reminds you that life here balances precariously between age-old traditions and unfolding histories, between community rituals and the relentless march of time. By the week's close, fatigue mingles softly with resolve, settling beneath worn limbs and steady heartbeats. Within the tempered quiet of olive shadows, you understand that survival threads through these silent promises. It is not forged in solitary knowledge alone, but in the patient growth of trust, grounded in roots that run deep, steady, and true beneath timeless stones. The beat of the city unfolds, a soft murmur of footsteps, the distant laughter of children, the clink of pottery in homes winding down to rest. You pause for a moment, your fingers brushing the cool curve of marble, steps beneath the fading light, the familiar texture grounding you in a world that feels both foreign and slowly becoming home. This week marks a subtle, profound shift, a quiet turning point where the pull of your past life loosens, replaced by a growing sense of belonging carved from small gestures and daily rhythms. Your mind, once tethered tightly to digital logic and rapid calculations, now moves more slowly, adapting to the unhurried cadence of ancient Athens. You share fragments of your knowledge, coding loops, logical sequences, with philosophers gathered beneath olive branches, translating complex concepts into tangible stories drawn in dust and charcoal. Their eyes reflect curiosity and caution, their debates weaving your foreign ideas into the fabric of their enduring search for truth. Yet belonging here is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is found in moments beyond words, a shared meal broken softly between friends, hands offered in silence, the warmth of firelight flickering across worn faces. Each encounter deepens your roots in this place, imperfect, alive, and intricate. The city hums with the tension of distant wars and fragile alliances. But in these evening hours, the pulse steadies to something more intimate, more human. You feel the weight of choice between the life you carried before and the uncertain promise of this new time. The familiar comfort of modern assumptions clashes gently with the raw textures of daily survival and ancient custom. Yet, beneath the fatigue of adaptation, a quiet resolve settles within you. Survival here requires more than knowledge. It demands presence, patience, and the courage to embrace belonging, not as a fleeting visitor, but as part of the enduring story etched beneath the sun-warmed stones and starlit skies of Athens. The sharp crackle of firewood, harsh and relentless, fills the streets while distant voices rise in frantic shouts beneath the sickle moon. You feel grit settle into your throat with every breath, the grime clinging to skin and tunic alike. The heat presses around you, a fiery shroud against the cool night, as the city fights an unseen battle, one of loss sweeping swiftly through its fragile veins. This week pulls you into a sudden crisis, raw and unyielding. The flames that lick at wooden stalls and tumble over clay vessels threaten more than property. They rattle the fragile sense of order that holds this ancient polis together. You move with steady hands despite the chaos, drawing on skills honed in a world of precision and logic. In the midst of destruction, you map patterns, not beneath a glowing screen, but in the urgent flow of human response, the chain of cause and effect writ large in frantic gestures and whispered commands. The philosophers gather at the edges, their debates on truth and reason momentarily hushed by fear and loss. Your explanations, simple sketches of coding principles etched on broken pottery, seem fragile against the roaring backdrop, yet deeper understanding flickers in their eyes, a recognition that knowledge alone cannot prevent disaster, but may guide the rebuilding that follows. You witness the city's resilience and fragility entwined, a daughter clutching a scorched doll, a shopkeeper mourning a lost stall, neighbors pulling together beneath smoke-darkened skies. The unyielding logic of your past life strains against the unpredictable currents of grief and hope flowing through these narrow streets. As flames retreat and first light spills cautiously over fallen rubble, exhaustion seeps through your bones like a slow tide. Yet within this fatigue rests a quiet resolve, the acceptance that survival here is never guaranteed, but forged anew each day between courage and despair. You understand, then, that knowledge must be tempered by empathy, and that the hardest battles are not only against fire or fate, but against the aching weight of sudden loss and the unspoken promise to rise again. The voice beneath your fingers feels chilled and unforgiving. Centuries of wear smoothing edges, but leaving no comfort. Around you, voices murmur low, punctuated by the shuffle of sandals on dust and stone. The air is thick with unspoken questions, a gathering of minds wrestling with truths as old as the city itself. You stand among them, feeling the quiet tremors of your own identity shifting beneath the weight of ancient thought. This week is one of subtle upheaval, where the certainty of self, anchored in the logic and order of another time, begins to unravel. The philosophers draw you into their circle, their debates twisting and turning through questions of morality, existence, and the nature of knowledge. Your attempts to bridge centuries with diagrams of loops and conditionals etched in the dust feel both vital and fragile. They listen, dissect, and challenge, their ancient world refusing to yield to easy answers. You sense how your modern assumptions, rooted in clarity and control, clash with the fluid, layered reality here, where truth is woven from paradox and shadow. The temple's stones echo with histories of gods and men intertwined, rituals and reason coexisting uneasily. You grapple not only with ideas, but with a shifting sense of place, an outsider caught between past and present, logic and mystery. Beyond the temple walls, the city stirs under cool skies, its pulse marked by the rhythms of daily life and the distant drums of looming conflicts. You see how identity here is not fixed, but shaped by community, belief, and shared struggle. Your own presence, strange yet increasingly familiar, threads into this tapestry, part revelation, part disruption. By week's end, weariness settles deep, a mingling of mental strain and the chill still clinging to skin. Yet within that fatigue, a quiet clarity crystallizes. Survival is less about certainty and more about embracing doubt, less about control and more about openness. In the shadow of ancient columns, you feel how discovery is a journey not just outward, but inward, a fragile, unfolding reckoning with the self that lives between worlds, the roar of voices. The air hangs thick with the tang of sweat and dust, mixed with the sharp, acrid sting of sun-warmed leather and crushed herbs from scattered stalls. Around you, the assembly churns like a living beast, fiery arguments lashing out, words thrown like spears, and silences sharp as blades. The ground vibrates beneath your sandals, the rhythm harsh and relentless, testing the steadiness of your resolve. This week thrusts you into the heart of the city's restless pulse, where your modern logic and coding knowledge meet the fierce chaos of Athenian democracy in full voice. Philosophers and citizens alike grapple with questions of truth, power, and justice, their debates spiraling in heated cycles, caught between reason and passion. You lay out sequences, loops of cause and effect, conditionals shaping consequence on shards and in dust, trying to channel the roaring energy into patterns of understanding. Yet the agora resists simplification. The crowds move unpredictably, emotions surging like wind, spilling over into fractured alliances and sudden outbursts. Your assumptions about clarity and control falter here, where the human element, fear, ambition, loyalty, fractures any neat algorithm. Each intervention you make stirs ripples, some helpful, others fraught with unintended consequences. The simmering tension around Athens, fueled by lingering Persian threats and internal disputes, sharpens every exchange. You sense how fragile the city's balance is, how survival hinges not just on intellect, but on navigating the unpredictable tides of public will. In these moments, your role shifts from teacher to participant, learning that logic alone cannot tame the wild heart of the assembly. By day's end, exhaustion settles heavily over you, worn muscles and racing thoughts blending into a dull ache. Yet, within that fatigue glimmers a deeper insight, the realization that survival here means embracing contradiction, holding steady amid chaos, and allowing the fierce roar of human voices to be not just noise, but a call towards something larger, ever-evolving, and profoundly alive. The scent of crushed olive leaves and damp earth beneath worn sandals. He feels it before he sees it, the tight, clenched grip of a wounded hand resting on his forearm, the slick warmth seeping through rough linen and skin. Around him, The narrow street hums with hurried footsteps and quiet murmurs, neighbors bending toward pain. The city holding its breath beneath an unspoken weight. This week, sacrifice is no abstract idea, but a living, breathing ache, etched in bone and muscle. He remembers the precision of his past life, where errors were corrected with a few keystrokes, and control was nearly absolute. Here, in the crucible of ancient life, every choice carries risks carved deeply in flesh and consequence. His modern tools, logic, reason, digital certainty, meet their limits amid the ragged edges of human vulnerability. He presses clean cloth against a bleeding wound, hands steady despite the unfamiliar fragility. The philosophers who listened to his lessons on coding sequences and conditional logic watch with quiet concern. Their debates on truth and justice now ripple with the intimacy of lived pain and loss. He sketches diagrams carefully, trying to map healing as a process: input, response, adaptation. But the path is unpredictable, shaping itself in the messy contours of human will and biology. Outside, the murmur of war drums and the promise of distant conflict add urgency to every act. The city's survival hinges on harsh realities, both in battlefields beyond and in the narrow alleys where community ties are tested under strain. Your role expands beyond logic to that of healer, witness, and reluctant bearer of burdens that no algorithm can fully explain. As night falls and the firelight flickers low, fatigue seeps through your bones, mingling with the weight of choices made and consequences borne. In the quiet shadows, a somber clarity settles. Survival demands sacrifice, sometimes painful beyond reason. The line between knowledge and compassion blurs, revealing that true wisdom often grows not from certainty, but from the courage to face loss with steady heart and open hands. The pain brushing gently against cool marble and rough skin alike. The air carries the scent of dew-damp earth mingled with faint traces of incense rising from distant altars. You lift your gaze slowly, catching glimpses of faces framed by the soft glow, reflective, searching, some worn by years of question and quiet resolve. In this fragile light, the city's ancient shadows seem less like burdens and more like the textures of a new self folding open inside you. This week, the clarity of morning brings a dawning awareness, a shifting of identity forged between centuries and struggles. Your modern logic, so exact and concise, flutters tentatively amidst the fluid conversations of philosophers contemplating truth, justice, and the soul. You trace lines of code adapted to ancient symbols, your hands sketching gentle models in dust or charcoal where ideas and tradition intertwine. The pondering eyes around you invite a deeper dialogue, one that reaches beyond calculation into the uncertain human heart of knowledge. Your assumptions, once firm as steel, soften in the face of this layered reality where meaning rests as much on silence and gesture as on spoken word. The city breathes its own rhythm, merchants beginning barter, stones warming beneath advancing sunlight, priests moving quietly through temple shadows. You notice how these daily rituals wrap time around itself, how the past and present pulse together in a living dance. In these moments, the self you thought you knew unfolds subtly, a tapestry woven of dissonance and harmony, of belonging and estrangement. The tasks you undertake, translating coding logic into philosophy, offering new frameworks for reason, become acts of both preservation and transformation, shaping not only knowledge, but the very contours of who you are in this ancient world. As the day matures, fatigue hums softly beneath your skin, mingling with a quiet contentment and the gentle ache of change. You understand that survival is not only the mastery of external challenges, but the patient embracing of inner evolution. Beneath ancient temple columns, bathed in morning's reflective glow, you meet yourself anew, fragile, uncertain, and quietly resolute in the vast unfolding of time. Its mellow notes weaving with the crackle of the fire as shadows dance upon rough stone walls. The warm scent of burning olive wood and melting beeswax fills the air, mingling with the faint earthiness of dried herbs tucked into a nearby corner. You sit close to the hearth, fingers tracing the grain of worn wood beneath your palm, your thoughts drifting gently with the music. The flickering flames cast a glow that seems to settle not just around you, but inside, a quiet invitation to reflect on the journey that has brought you here, far from the familiar hum of modern screens to this ancient world of dust and dialogue. This week, evening has become a sacred space, a pause between the relentless motion of survival and the fragile stillness of understanding. Your mind stirs with memories of the days spent teaching scholars the language of logic and code, patterns once digital now translated into chalk marks on sun-baked stones. The philosophers you've met, their eyes sharpened by yearning and skepticism, receive your foreign wisdom as both challenge and gift. It is in these exchanges that you begin to perceive the deeper currents of human inquiry, where truth is less a destination than an evolving conversation threaded through time. Around you, the city breathes softly in the night, the distant song of a flute, blending with the murmur of gathering voices fading under starlight. You sense the delicate balance of belonging and estrangement pressing quietly against your thoughts. Your modern frameworks, once clear and precise, now weave uneasily with the layered textures of ancient thought, where certainty gives way to paradox, and the pulse of living connection. The flickering hearth becomes a mirror for your own transformation, its warm light steadying, yet shifting, revealing shadows that stretch and contract with each breath. Fatigue tugs gently at your limbs, a welcome weight after days filled with the sharp edges of learning and longing. Yet beneath this weariness lies a subtle hope, a growing recognition that survival here is not just about knowledge or adaptation, but about embracing the ever-changing dance between past and present, logic and mystery, belonging and discovery. In the lull of music and firelight, you understand that this journey is as much within as without, a continuous unfolding guided by soft strums and quiet resolve. The crystal awakens. Soft footsteps echo on worn stone. The low murmur of early voices threading through narrow streets. You feel the weight of final gestures. The lingering touch of hands once familiar now slipping away like shadows in the rising light. This week draws to a close with parting words unspoken, but felt deeply ties loosened amidst the quiet ease of morning and the inevitable pull of solitude. The friendships forged through shared knowledge and whispered trust now tremble under the strain of shifting currents. Your presence, once a beacon of curiosity and connection, has become a source of distance for some. The philosophers who gathered eagerly for your lessons on logic and the architecture of code now hold measured gazes, their questions tempered with reserve. You trace diagrams in dust or on chipped pottery, trying to map the pathways where hearts and minds diverge, aware that the complexity of human bonds resists even the most precise algorithms. Each deliberate step you take away from those once close is marked by a silent reckoning between belonging and self-preservation, between past and future lives. The city hums with its timeless rhythm, festivals ebbing and flow, markets bustling anew. Yet beneath the familiar sounds lies the ache of absence. You feel the pull of memories intertwined with the present. Shared meals beneath olive trees, the flicker of firelight on thoughtful faces, the fragile promise of trust. Your modern assumptions falter here, where loyalty is woven through countless unspoken acts, and history whispers in every stone. The distant drums of war and political upheaval underscore the fragile threads holding society together, reminding you that survival is as much about navigating loss as triumph. As daylight deepens, exhaustion settles over you, not just of body, but of spirit, a muted sorrow wrapped in quiet resolve. You realize that farewells, like beginnings, are part of the enduring code of life, complex, imperfect, and irrevocable. In this ancient place, beneath skies that cradle both memory and hope, you carry forward the weight of what must be left behind, knowing the journey continues beyond every parting glance. The wind across the stone. The air carries the scent of sea salt, mingled with crushed herbs, and the faint smoke drift of distant hearth fires winding through narrow alleys. Around you, the city hums with a calm unfamiliar after weeks of turmoil. A gentle lull punctuated by the distant murmur of voices and the occasional clatter of a potter's wheel. You feel the steady pulse of this place beneath your skin, a rhythm slow and sure, wrapping you in the embrace of a world both ancient and newly home. This week carries a subtle but profound shift, a quiet surrender to belonging and identity shaped by experience rather than memory. Your mind, once sharply tuned to technical logic and rapid calculation, now measures its steps against the ebb and flow of everyday life here. Teaching philosophers about loops and conditionals continues, but those lessons have softened, becoming more about shared discovery than instruction. You trace simple symbols in dust and charcoal, speaking in a language that folds future knowledge into timeless questions of truth and reason. The city's calm does not erase the years or the challenges faced. It carries them like layers beneath its surface, visible in the worn columns and weathered faces of its people. You watch children weaving through crowds, elders settling into evening rituals, merchants folding up their stalls as dusk cools the air. Each scene is a thread woven into your evolving sense of self, a new identity forged in the quiet moments between tasks and talks. Your modern assumptions waver here, yielding to the city's rhythms and the ancient customs that shape it. Where once you might have imposed certainty, now you find value in patience and humility. The threat of distant wars lingers, a reminder of the fragile balance sustaining this life. Yet, in these calm streets, survival feels less like a battle and more like a careful, ongoing negotiation with time and place. As twilight deepens, fatigue settles gently, not only in your body, but in your thoughts, a melding of relief and reflection. You realize that belonging is less about reclaiming past certainties and more about embracing the fluid, unpredictable flow of this present. Here, beneath warm sand and quiet skies, you meet a version of yourself shaped by change, grounded in an ancient land that no longer feels completely foreign, but softly, unmistakably home. The smoky scent of meat roasting over open coals fills the air, thick and heavy beneath the wide, star-studded canopy of an Athenian night. Shadows flicker against rough stone walls, their forms stretching and shrinking with the gentle pulse of dancing flames. He feels the coarse grain of earthenware mugs warming beneath his palms, the soothing weight of shared sustenance easing the sharp edges of the day's weariness. Around him, voices mingle in low tones, stories told, laughter subdued, a quiet forging of memories destined to outlast the flicker of momentary moments. This week draws him into a profound reckoning with the idea of legacy, The imprint one leaves threading through time like the slow burn of embers that persist long after firewood is spent. His modern knowledge, once cold and precise, now folds tenderly into the contours of ancient thought, seeking to blend with a world where existence is measured not only in deeds, but in the echoes they leave behind. He traces diagrams beside the hearth, complex patterns distilled into simple lines and symbols, hoping to illuminate pathways not just for survival, but for meaning. The philosophers listen with rapt attention, their faces drawn and thoughtful beneath starlight. Their debates on truth, justice, and the soul take on new hues, colored by the strange infusion of logic born centuries ahead, yet grounded in the enduring questions that shape human destiny. Around the fire, friendships deepen and fragile trusts bloom, every shared glance and gesture layering the quiet architecture of belonging. Outside this intimate glow, the city's pulse slows, but does not cease. The weight of past battles and future uncertainties lingers, etched into the weathered columns and uneven streets. He realizes that legacy here is neither simple nor static. It is a living conversation between past and present, whisper and stone, silence and song. As the fire's warmth fades, exhaustion settles gently into muscle and mind, a welcome surrender after days of relentless striving. Yet within that fatigue stirs a quiet resolve. Survival is more than enduring. It is cherishing the fleeting, nurturing connections that ripple across time, and embracing the fragile beauty of leaving a trace beneath cold stone and endless stars. The golden perfume of olive groves waking to morning breeze, and the faint, comforting smoke of hearth fires just stoked. Around you, the city stretches and breathes between the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of the marketplace. A calm settles like a balm, weaving together the threads of day and night, past and present. In this gentle light, a fragile peace rises, born from the collision of two worlds folded slowly into one. This final week unfolds as a quiet reckoning, a moment where the complexity of survival and belonging crystallizes into something less elusive, more tender. Your mind, still tuned by the precision of codes and algorithms, embraces the fluid rhythms of this ancient life. Teachings once confined to dusty scrolls take living shape in hushed conversations beneath olive branches, where philosophers grapple not just with logic, but with the human heart's intricate dance of desire and doubt. Your modern assumptions soften here, yielding to the patient pulse of community and the unspoken laws etched deep into the city's stones. The threat of distant wars and uneasy alliances remains a shadow on the periphery. Yet the day's calm offers a space to breathe, to measure the contours of identity reshaped and roots firmly planted. Hands touch dusty pottery, share loaves broken and passed among friends, gesture toward symbols inscribed in dust and memory. Each moment is a thread, weaving a new fabric of belonging, one grounded not in solitary mastery, but in connection, adaptation, and the quiet courage to embrace uncertainty. As the sun ascends higher, warmth fills you, a steady heartbeat in the vast mosaic of Athens. Fatigue whispers softly, a companion to reflection. You realize survival is a journey without clear end, a continuous unfolding shaped by choices tender and bold. Between the glowing dawn and open roads, peace is found not in escape, but in embracing the rich, imperfect promise of this ancient, enduring world.